Welcome to Australasian Airlines video tutorial on operating the iFly Boeing 737. This is the third and final video tutorial for operating the 737, and as you can see we're almost at our top of descent. So what we need to do now is we just need to set up the aircraft for our descent and our arrival. So the first thing we need to do is we need to check the weather for our arrival. So we go back to our weather program and we just change this to YMML and we click update, and we've got winds 240 at 13, broken 4,500, scattered 6,000. Okay, our real life ATIS says runway 16 for arrivals, runway 27 for departures, so we know we're using runway 16 and we know what our wind is. Okay, so what we need to do now is we go back to our aircraft and we need to, now it's very important that you do this stage. So once you've got your weather, we need to actually zero this altitude hold out. Now what that will do, that won't actually start your descent. What it means is that when the aircraft gets to its top of descent stage, that it will automatically start descending. It's important that you don't miss this step, because what will happen is if it's still set for 35,000, that once you reach your top of descent point, the aircraft will not descend, it will just continue on at 35,000. So once we've checked our weather for our arrival, we know what runway we're using. We can then zero this altitude out, and we then need to select our arrival. So we go to our FMC, and you see here we've got 156 miles till we get to Melbourne. We've currently got 8 tonne of fuel on board, and we've just got a couple more waypoints in here to go. So all we do is we go to, same as before, we programmed our SID, our departure before, so now we want to program our arrival. So we go again to departure arrivals. Okay, so this time we're doing an arrival, so we go YMML arrival. Okay, now we need to know what arrival we're doing, so we go back to our route here, and it's got RB H119ML. So this is the last major waypoint before Melbourne, which is RB. Now we're going to be doing an ILS approach, so all ILSs have the letter A after them, so it's alpha. So alpha is your ILS, B is your Bravo, is your VOR, D is your RNAV, things like that. So really all we need to concentrate on for flight sim is our RB1 Alpha and our RB1 Bravo. So if we're using runway 34, which is a VOR approach, we'd be using our Bravo arrival. So the first thing we need to do is select our runway. So we're doing an ILS. So if you have a look down the side here, you've got D, 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 I. So the D represents your VOR and your I represents your ILS. Okay, so we're doing an ILS approach. So the first thing we do is we select our ILS approach runway 16. Okay, and that's selected. Now don't worry about transition at this stage. I wouldn't worry about the transition. And we're going to do a RB1 Alpha. Okay, remember RB is our last waypoint before Melbourne, so we put RB, and Alpha is is A. That's for our ILS. Okay, so that's the main arrival. So your ILS is always your first approach, and then if there's ILS isn't available, then you go to your VOR. So for this, once you've selected your ILS or your runway, your arrival runway, it will then show you all the stars for that runway. So we're going to do an RB1 Alpha. So we select that, no transition, so it doesn't have a transition, so we select no transition and we click execute. Okay, same as before, we need to go into the legs page and just make sure that there's no route discontinuities. So you can see here we've got all the way through, we've got page 1 of 3, but see we've got ML in here. We know straight away that that's going to be a problem, because we're not going to go from RB to Bowl and then to Melbourne. Okay, so we're going to have a route discontinuity, and there it is there. Okay, so we're actually going to go through and take that ML out. So from Bowl, okay, we'll then go to there's the C1, so that's basically your ILS 16. Okay, so that would then go after the Bowl, but we've got a we've got a couple of other waypoints in here. So what we need to do is we need to go into our charts, and we come into Melbourne and we select the RB1 star. So we got RB1, so we got star RB1 ABD arrivals, so that's what we want, the star RB1 alpha. So we bring that in. Okay, so there we go, we've got RB, Bunky, Bowl, and then down the ILS. Okay, so it's important that we get these waypoints in the right order. So we've got RB, Bunky, Bowl. Okay, so we make sure that we get these in the right order. So we got RB, and then we grab Bunky, and we put that after RB, so that goes in there. So we got RB, Bunky, Bowl, and then the ILS 16, RAC, runway 16 vectors. Okay, so as you can see, we've just now added those waypoints. So RB, Bunky, Bowl, and we've got them here, RB, Bunky, Bowl. So that's the order that you've got to put them in. Okay, once you've got all that in there, you then hit execute and go back to progress. Okay, so you can now see that our top of descent is now 24 miles till we get to our top of descent. Okay, so and what will happen is the FMC will automatically tune the course and the ILS frequency for our approach. So what we'll do is we've actually just paused it at the moment just so that I could go through this whole process with you, and then now we'll take it off pause and we'll continue the flight until we get to our descent. Okay, so you can see on here that we're almost at top of descent. We've got, actually top of descent's pretty much where Danks is, so we've got 21 miles to run. We're almost there. And what will happen is these courses here will change automatically to the Melbourne, now to runway 16. Now what happens is if these don't change, sometimes they don't. They're supposed to, but sometimes they don't for whatever reason. I found that at a lot of the add-on Orbix payware scenery airports like Melbourne and Brisbane, that they don't change automatically. For some reason, there's something to do with the add-on scenery, the Orbix add-on scenery. So if these don't change automatically, then I'll show you how to do that. So we know what we're doing. We're almost at top of descent. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly we'll just pause it for a second. We'll just come back in here, and if you have a look on here, we'll just go back to oh, actually here it is here. This tells you your ILS here. So actually we'll just go back to the actual ILS approach plate for runway 16. So ILS runway 16. Okay, so here you go. You've got the actual approach plate here. You've got some NDBs you can use, so we can actually tune our NDB in. We've got a VOR frequency, we've got the runway course, and we've got the ILS frequency. So the first thing we'll do is we'll grab the ILS frequency, which is 109.70. So we go to our aft electrical panel, and over here on the standby we put 109.70. and we just move that across to active. So we've got 109.70, same as over here. Now it's very important for the auto land. Now this aircraft has auto land, which is a really brilliant thing, really good technology. So what you need to do is you have to make sure that both nav1 and nav2 are set for the same ILS frequency, and that both course selectors for the first officer and the captain are selected as well. So we've got to make sure that this is select for 109.70. So there we go, 109.70 active in both nav1 and nav2. Now we can also put an NDB in there, so we'll use NDB of 338. So we just back to our aircraft, and same again in our com here we use, sorry, in our ADF here we use 338, and we just make that active. Okay, so that's now active over here, and we can do the same as over here. Now it doesn't really matter, I mean you can put it over here if you want to. You could put it into that one and make that active there, same as here. You could make that 338, doesn't really matter. You can use either one and just make it active that way. and we've got our frequency set in there, so that's all set up there. Okay, now it's important that we get our course selected correctly, so we come back here. So runway 16 is 160 degrees, so we just go, remember left mouse button does single digits, so just bring that back down to a 0, and then right mouse button will do it in multiples of 10, so that'll bring it to 160, and same as here. Okay, so just left mouse button to 0 and right mouse button to 160, and that's all set up. Okay, so we can just come off pause again. Okay, we've got to make sure that this altimeter is zeroed out. Okay, it's very important that this altitude hold is set for zeros, because like I said, if you're at 35,000, it won't actually start its descent automatically. Okay, you can see in here it's now opened up, the VOR is 1970, so that's now set, and we're almost at top of descent. So we've programmed our FMC for our arrival. There's just one more thing we have to do in there, which I'll show you very quickly once we start our descent. But once we've actually zeroed out our altitude hold, we've checked our weather, we've got our arrival runway, we've programmed that into our FMC for our star and our arrival. We've gone through and fixed up any problems in there. We've selected our ILS frequency into nav1 and nav2, and we've put our course into both course selectors. We're good to go for our descent, so we should be starting our descent very shortly. Okay, there we go. We've just started our descent. Okay, so the aircraft's automatically descending, and we now have our descent profile. Now it's very important that we actually we keep an eye on this here, because if it starts to get too low, now the idea is that you always fly to your needle. So if this diamond here drops below this center line, as it is starting to, then you have to actually use some spoilers, and the spoilers will actually actually increase your descent rate, so that you can actually keep a profile. This is actually a descent profile. The idea is to keep this diamond in the middle of this bar here, and that will keep you on the correct glide path for your descent. Okay, if that starts to get too low, you'll see some numbers will come up, and it will tell you how high you are. So if this goes below this center line, it means that you're too high, and it will actually tell you how high you are. Same as if it goes above the center line, it means that you're too low, and it will tell you how low you are in feet. But the idea is just to keep those spoilers on. You may have to just keep them on for a fair bit, and just let that come back up into the center line. Okay, the next thing we need to do is go into our FMC, and we need to tell it our actual landing reference. So we go into initial ref, which is this one here, and we've got our landing speed and basically our flaps and our landing speed. So we're going to use 40 degrees flaps, 144 knots. So all we do is push the button next to that, that'll bring it up there, and then just pop it in there. Okay, so we've now told it our landing reference, which is 40 degrees flaps, and our 144 knots is our landing speed. So we can just go back to progress, and it'll just tell us our end of descent, how much fuel and wind and all the rest of it in there. So as you can see, we're still a little bit too high, so I've still got the spoilers on, which you can see in the throttle quadrant here. So the spoilers are still up, and yeah, we're just trying to maintain that descent profile. It's very important that you maintain that descent profile all the way through the descent, because if you actually come to the ILS approach and you're too high or too low, then yeah, you'll be doing a missed approach go around, and the aircraft will definitely not land correctly on the auto land. You'll have to either bring it in manually or go around, and yeah, that just becomes messy. So hopefully we're just going to be able to continue this flight all the way through and be able to show you a full auto land. So just monitoring the systems again, this VNAV light, making sure that that doesn't go out. If you have a overspeed disconnect, it's very important that you get that speed down, keep that VNAV light on. But if you've got your spoilers on to maintain this descent profile, you shouldn't have any problems with an overspeed disconnect. So we're just coming all the way down. Once we actually get to 18,000 feet, which is the flight sim transition altitude, default transition altitude, we just set the altimeter again for our local QNH, which is our Melbourne QNH. So that'll be just using B on the keyboard, and that'll just reset that back. So all we're doing now is just monitoring the aircraft on the descent, just making sure we keep on this descent profile, and just making sure we don't lose that VNAV light, and just having a look at the aircraft systems and the engine readouts, making sure that the temps and pressures are all fine, and just basically just keeping an eye on things. So you can see up here there's a decelerate. So what will happen is once the aircraft gets to that, it will automatically start decelerating, and it'll actually slowly work its way down, so that once you get to your 10,000 foot height or altitude, your speed will then be below 250 knots. So you just have to manage your speed with your spoilers and managing this descent profile. But what you'll find is mostly the aircraft will actually adjust its descent rate and it's according for its speed, so that when you actually get to 10,000 feet you are below 250 knots. If you find that the aircraft is still too fast, then yeah, just definitely keep those spoilers on and get the speed down, because you can't actually get any of your flaps out or your gear out until you've got that speed right down to at least 210, 215 knots, somewhere in there. I mean, your first stage of flaps is around about 210 knots, and we'll just go through those different flap speeds as we go through the approach. So yeah, just monitor that speed. It should the aircraft should just maintain its descent profile in order to keep that speed down, but if you find it is getting a bit high, then yeah, just keep those spoilers on all the way through the descent, and especially to keep this on profile, because the last thing you want to be coming into the ILS is too high. If you're too low, you can climb up a bit, but once you get too high for the ILS, it's, you know, you can't really do much about that. You've just got to go around. So you can see our different waypoints coming up here. So I've got that set for 80 nautical miles. So that's gone to 160, which is a bit far. So I mean, I could set that back to 40, but I'll just keep that at 80, so you can see those different waypoints. So they're all the different waypoints that we're going to be following. So you can see our nav line. That's our track, and magenta track line. So that's going to go in from Apple. It'll go into Arby, which is our arrival, and just basically follow the glide slope and the ILS localizer all the way in to runway 16. So you can see that we're just slightly below the profile, but we've still got the spoilers on, as you can see here in the throttle quadrant. Spoilers are still armed, or still on, sorry, still active, and we're maintaining a fairly good descent profile there. And you can see that we've got 80 F1, which is our 338 for our NDB. Okay, we're almost at transition altitude, so we'll be able to set the altimeter, as you can see here. Okay, so we've just descended it below there, so we'll just reset that. So there we go, we've just reset that. That's at 1012 now. So you may just have to readjust that through the descent and the approach, but just keep an eye on it, and generally speaking you shouldn't have to adjust it too much. So as you can see, we're maintaining a fairly good descent profile all the way through there. We've got 13 miles to run until we get to Apple, and then at Apple you can see on the multifunction display here that we will be decelerating. So the aircraft will decelerate by itself according to the FMC. So it's a very sophisticated aircraft. It's got a lot of complex systems, and this is as real as it gets to the real 737. The whole flight management computer is onboard computers is all working together to fly this aircraft, maintain the correct profiles, airspeeds, everything like that. So there's really not a whole lot you have to do. All you have to do is just maintain the systems and just keep an eye on things and make sure everything's running smoothly. And it's exactly the same in the real world. You know, that this is what they do in the real flights, in the real 737s. The aircraft flies the aircraft, and you know, the FMC flies the aircraft, and the pilots just monitor the systems. And if there's a problem, they intervene. But you know, for the most part, they just sit back and enjoy the flight. So as you can see, we're almost at the apple. We've got 4 miles to run, and till we decelerate. Just some information up here. You can see our ground speed, our true airspeed. The wind is 249, so it's slightly behind us. It's a bit of a crosswind, 46 knots, and yeah, pretty windy. Okay, see, we're now on descent profile. We can take the spoilers off, and it will just automatically decelerate. As you can see, the speed's starting to settle itself out now. If you find that you're too fast, again, I've just put the spoilers back on because we are going below the descent profile and the speed is a bit high. So I've just put those back on. But you'll find as you get closer to the 10,000 foot mark, the descent rate will actually decrease, the feet per minute. And this is a handy little gauge that I've installed. Just gives me an idea of my feet per minute descent rate. As you can see here, the speed is definitely dropped below 250 knots. I'm actually above. I'm actually below my descent profile, so I can just take those spoilers off now because my speed has dropped below 250 knots, and I'm now back on the profile. So it's fairly easy as long as you keep on top of things from the start of the descent and you really monitor everything. It's fairly easy to make sure that by the time you actually get to your ILS that everything's set, ready to go. So just main thing is to really watch this descent profile, because anything above or below is going to create problems for you once you actually get to the ILS. The speed is pretty much the aircraft will manage its speed, but like I said, just add the spoilers if you need to. You've got spoilers on to maintain the profile, so that should help with the speed reduction as well. So we're almost at 10,000 feet, so at 10,000 feet we'll go and do a few other things in the overhead, like turning our landing lights on and turning our strobe lights on as well. So I've now got rid of the spoilers, they're retracted, and we're now perfectly on descent profile. Look at that, that's right on the money. So everything's looking really good. We're below 250 knots for the 10,000 feet, so we're just coming up on the 10,000 feet now. You can see there's a bit of cloud out there, so that's not too bad. Okay, so we've just descended below 10,000 feet, so we go to our overhead, we turn our landing lights on, we turn our strobe lights on, so position, strobe and steady, and APU start. Okay, so make sure you click that all the way to start, so APU will start up, and we can get that up and running. It's I usually do it in the top of descent stage, in the below 10,000 feet stage, because that way I'm doing it as I'm doing other things along here. You can do it once you've actually landed, but I find that you do tend to forget when you're actually taxiing in. So I find that you do it now when you put your landing lights on and strobe lights on, and that way it's done. You don't have to think about it. Okay, once we get to around about 8,000 feet, we'll then be able to put our auto brake to 3, a minimum of 3. I usually go to max, just helps slow the aircraft down. As you can tell, it's pretty windy out there. We got wind at 76. It's changed now, so wind at 76.15. The aircraft's rocking around a bit. Airspeed's fluctuating. It's important that this VNAV light stays on at all times. If it ever goes out, you just have to check the FMC message and get it back on again. Okay, we're coming up to 8,000 feet, so we can put our auto brake on. I usually go to max. Just gives you all that extra help to slow the aircraft down and use as less runway as possible. Alright, so this is where we can set up the auto land. So once we get to around about 5,000 feet, we just keep an eye on this profile. Make sure we maintain descent profile. Once we get to around about 5,000 feet, we can then actually turn the systems, the autopilot systems on for the auto land, and then it's just a matter of maintaining our speed, getting our speed down so we can get the flaps out and the gear down and that sort of thing. So everything's looking pretty good at the moment. We've got our ILS frequency set for 109.70, and we've got both course selectors set for 160. Okay, as you can see, the localizer has now come up. This represents the localizer. As soon as you get that come up, you know you can set the auto land. So all you need to do is push the approach button. Won't actually work yet. Wait till we get to 5,000. I usually do it around about 5,000, and then I know that it'll work. So we can just bring our map view back to 5. As you can see, we got a bit of a crosswind there. Okay, we've got our glide slope now and our localizer. So we've got our localizer, glide slope. So we should be able to just push the approach button and then CMDB. Okay, so all we need to do is once we get our glide slope up, we just hit the approach button, we hit CMDB, and then we're set for the auto land. Now if you find that you're actually too high, see how the glide slope says that we're actually a little bit low, sorry, if we find we're a bit low according to the glide slope, so it's telling us that we're a bit low and we need to climb, and you can see that you're constantly descending, all you need to do is just reset the altitude hold for say 5,000. It will just hold that altitude and until this localizer centers, and then it will just continue descending again. So we'll just put the 5,000 there just to set the hold, just so that we don't go below 5,000 feet, and that way we won't be too low for our actual approach. Okay, so we've got the auto brake set for max for landing. Now once we actually lock the localizer and the glide slope, so once we're actually in the auto land procedure, don't worry about this descent profile. See how it tells you that we're way too high and we need to descend? Just ignore that and go purely by this, because we're now on the auto land, it's now on the approach, and as you can see, It's now centered and we're now descending automatically. Okay, so we're now on the ILS approach, and this descent profile we can ignore. Okay, this descent profile is purely for the actual descent to make sure that we are at the right height for our ILS approach. Okay, as you can see, our speeds now come back up, so we can now drop that all the way around back to for 150. And if you find that we're a bit fast, you can just use some spoilers. As you can see, there's another decelerate point coming up as well, so that'll help slow you down. So it's just a matter of maintaining this glide slope. The aircraft will automatically hold its position on the glide slope, and we just have to concentrate on getting our speed down so that we can get our flaps out and gear down. So like I said, you can just ignore this descent profile, just go purely on this ILS glide slope. And it's, I mean, we're slightly low, but it doesn't matter. It's you know, it's minimal, you know, not really that much of a problem at all. It'll descend pretty quickly to get that. And just manage this speed. So we've got to get this speed down. That's the main thing, is getting this speed down, so that we can actually get the flaps extended and the gear extended. So basically, once you get to 210, you can put a stage of flap in, 1 degree flap. Just keep those spoilers on, just get their speed down to at least 180, and you'll find that the aircraft will maintain its descent rate. Even with the spoilers on, it will continue to maintain a fairly nice descent rate to maintain that glide slope. So we're coming down. Okay, so we can 190, flaps 1, coming down through 186 knots. So there's 180. We can go 2 stages of 2 degrees flap and take the spoilers off. Okay, we can now go to 5 degrees flaps. Is at 175. And you can see the aircraft's nose dropping now to capture that glide slope again. You can see the outer marker light flashing here. That's to let us know that we're flying over the outer marker. Okay, we can go 10 degrees flaps. Okay, we're getting a terrain warning, but don't worry about that. We're on the actual glide slope. It just means that if we were, you know, to continue our descent rate, we're going to hit the ground. Well, we're going to be landing, so that's all okay. Okay, we go flaps 15, and we drop our gear out. Okay, once we've put our gear out, we can turn our landing lights on. And we can just drop all the flaps out once we get to 150, and we can set our speed for our reference speed. As you can see, we're not quite on the runway center line, so we just have to disengage everything and bring it in manually. Sometimes the auto land doesn't always work, and then you've just got to take over. So as you can see, I've just had to go manual to bring it back onto the runway. Okay, slightly off there. Reverse thrust set. Spoilers up. 60 knots. Cancel the spoilers. Cancel the reverse thrust, and auto brake off. And you can taxi into the runway. Just clear these lights here. Okay, once we actually start exiting the runway, spoilers up, down, flaps retracted. So as you can see, the auto land doesn't always work. It really depends on the wind. We had a fairly strong crosswind there, so it was blowing us off the actual course. But generally speaking, it works well. It's just if you got a really strong crosswind, it'll throw you off course. So once you've actually vacated the runway, you can then just come to a bit of a standstill and just go into the top and turn your landing light off, turn your strobe light off, nav lights back to steady, and put your APU gen switches on. So we're now running back on the APU generator. That can go back to there, and turn the engine bleed switches off and the APU bleed switch on, and then just taxi into the terminal. So as we're actually approaching the terminal area, we can then just turn our taxi lights off. And we can just follow our line into the terminal, into the bay. Okay, so once we actually pull into our bay and we've come to a stop, we can just go to our throttle quadrant. We just shut down the fuel valves, close the fuel valve, shut the engines down, and set the parking brake. You can just turn that caution light out. So we're just seeing our engines winding down now. Everything's starting to go off here. Low oil pressure on engine left and engine 1 and 2. So once your N2 comes back to 0.0, that's when you can turn your anti-collision light off, and you'll be able to open up your doors. Okay, so we'll just wait for that to go to 0. So that's at 0 now. So we just go to overhead, anti-collision light off, and we can open up our main door and our cargo doors and just hit the master caution light again. Okay, so once all the passengers off, we can just go through through our shutdown stage. So basically it works back to front. So we go yaw damper off, and we turn our fuel pumps off, and we can turn these ones off for the galley and whatnot. And the passenger cabin, don't worry about seatbelts, that's okay. engine 1, engine 2, hydraulic pumps, electrical hydraulic pumps, they can all go off. Probe heat off, window heat off. So as you can see, all these lights, all these warning lights are coming on now. So basically your shutdown is just a reverse of your startup. Trim air off, electric fan off, left pack off, right pack off, APU bleed off, and finally APU off, and this bus transfer to off. Standby power to auto is off, and your battery switch off. Okay, and then that's everything. That's the complete shutdown. So we're now back to a cold and dark cockpit. So that ends the tutorial. We're sorry the auto land didn't work too well there. Maybe I can sort of I'll probably put a tutorial together just purely for the auto land. See if I can get one to work. But generally speaking, that's the process. Just at 5,000 feet, hit the approach button, CMDB, so both these lights are on, and just manage your speeds and get your flaps and your gear out. But yeah, other than that, that's it. You should, between the 3 video tutorials now, you should be able to operate the iFly 737 without too much of a drama. But obviously, yeah, if you need more assistance, please don't hesitate to contact the airline. There's a couple of ways you can contact us via the main contact us page, or there's the pilots have their own email addresses. So yeah, you can contact us that way. But other than that, that's the end of the iFly 737 video tutorials, and we hope you've gained a lot of information out of that, and hope that will help you to fully understand how to fly the 737. Also, don't forget to check out our video tutorials on the 767-300 and also our other aircraft as well. So thanks for watching, and we hope you've enjoyed these videos, and we'll see you later.